But with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Warren. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for hosting us.
Yes, so this is all about Off-Piste, and we were talking beforehand that you're out on the slopes already. There's already snow down. There's good conditions already, right?
Yeah, it's been well, like anything with summer skiing, it's always unpredictable. We're quite lucky being on the Zermatt Glacier at the Klein Matterhorn because it is quite high, so you're almost touching 3,900 meters. So the general skiing is great, but obviously a lot of precipitation over the last sort of day and a half. Me and Rob, who I know a lot of you have seen on these talks, we work closely together at the academy. We're going over tomorrow. Actually, we're going over to shoot the technique for the first magazine, the first Ski Club of Great Britain magazine, Ski and Board. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll be skiing some powder tomorrow as well. So it's a kind of a thing we're shooting to get people back into skiing if you haven't skied for a few months, and a couple of little pointers for that. But more importantly, we want to ski some powder. That's our sort of our hope for tomorrow. So yeah, we'll watch this space. I'm sure you'll see us post a few things online.
Excellent. That's such good news as well about this time of year. So yeah, this is all about Off-Piste, and I guess for some of us that haven't quite ventured out before, there'll be different levels of off-piste gear on this call. But what are the main differences between on-piste and off-piste, if you, in your opinion, in terms of technique?
Well, yeah, it's a funny one. I mean, like, I know us as coaches, we kind of do quite a lot of work on piste to get people ready for off piste. It's quite a thing to just sort of think you can just venture into it and it's all going to work. Usually it doesn't. It's great fun though. I wouldn't say don't do it. I'd say go for it. It's just, it's great. But from our point of view, the biggest difference obviously is skiing on something groomed and compressed, where you can get away with skis slipping sideways and, things where you can make corrections within the turn. Off piste, definitely a lot less forgiving. Especially when you're submerged in the snow. You've got to be close to skiing technically quite well to make it work, or it sort of jumps up and bites you a little bit, and that's that. But yeah, no, I mean, I certainly from the academy's history, from what me and Rob love to do, we love skiing off piste, and it's not just powder snow. Off piste can be venturing off to do a couloir you've been having your eyes on for a little while. It could be skiing in an itinerary run or just off the sides of an itinerary run. Could be taking your guide away, or there's so much it encompasses. But actually, to the skier that hasn't had much experience, it can literally be going off the side of a piste. Just where the pisted run is, 10 meters aside, having a little blast, see how you get on, and it's it's thrilling, right? It's like the progression, it's the evolution for a lot of people.
What's the expression? No friends on a powder day is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah, no friends on a powder day. Although that being said, I think it's the type of the moment in your ski time and you want buddies with you. That's definitely you might want to jump in first, but no, it's a great time to sort of experience it with other people, like-minded people, and also people that've got a knowledge of safety as well.
And before you head out to the slopes, how important is like having the right equipment, whether you're renting or buying? Like what are the top tips to look out for, whether it's skis, boots, all that sort of thing?
I mean, I think off-piste is one of those situations. I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to go into an off-piste day. I mean, I've done it. My knees probably don't like it very much, and my technique probably doesn't like it very much. I prefer a wider ski, something typically like a vocal mantra would be the go-to. On a bigger day or a steeper slope, or maybe even more challenging conditions, I might go for a slightly wider version of the mantra, for example. But I think it's definitely something where it's worth taking a look at your kit. Boots, hopefully your boots are versatile enough that you can ski on piste and off piste with, and most people will stick to the one boot, and that's a general thing. Might change a little bit if you're going touring. You might be putting on a different bit of kit, but there's such great kit out there these days. There's walk modes on so many different models of boots. But skis is important, and I'd even say ski poles. The amount of times I've skied with people on academy courses who have rocked up on a course And you really want to use the four-wheel drive sort of mentality of like using your hands, touching the snow and your feet. But if you've got your baskets that are kind of like very, very skinny baskets at the bottom of your ski poles, they'll get submerged. They won't really be a support mechanism for you. So it's the first thing I'd say on equipment is check your poles, make sure you've got a basket that will give you support so you can get an assistance when you're trying to get into your new turn direction. But the most important thing, obviously, is the kit. And obviously, the beauty of the way that the industry has evolved in the last 10, 15 years is we have got so much out there now to play with different types of free ride ski. You could stick to an old school version that doesn't have much built into it. A lot of the ones these days have got, obviously rockers built into them. So even when you're going back on piste, you can carve with it. But I think the skis, they've helped us achieve more. They've helped a wider audience of people come into the off-piste environment because the kit essentially helps. And with a bit more width around you, you feel a bit more secure. That's a general sort of sensation of it.
You touched on it a little bit of, you focus on some on-piste skiing to help with the off-piste skiing. Are there any particular drills and exercises that help maybe on the on-piste when you're working for off-piste skiing as a goal?
Absolutely. Yeah, this question came up in one of the earlier talks actually about, I think it was on the carving webinar that we did. We were talking about carving. Carving, having the ability to link your carved turns together. Doesn't matter, you don't have to be, race grade carving. We're talking about sort of someone that's going from basic parallel to maybe making some pretty okay carved turns. It's really important because when you are skiing powder, especially at that crossover stage in the turn, you want to know that you're making that entry into the turn where both of your skis are tilting, hopefully at the same time. We often do work on piste before going in on the off-piste environment, and these are things you can do tomorrow, Hemel or Chill Factory or wherever you go in the UK. But making sure that you're skiing symmetrically. We brought this up the other week. Like we have often gone into off-piste situations, be it variables in an itinerary run or hopefully a beautiful off-piste run that's a blanket of powder, but quite often go into those environments with people that still have a form of an A-frame or an asymmetric stance. So this is where we sort of seek the assistance of brilliant boot fitters, which the UK is lucky enough to have probably most of some of the best guys in Europe for that job. But we try to get people. You're never going to get someone perfectly symmetrical quite often, but if you can get them closer to being symmetrical, it really helps. Because what you've got to imagine is when those beautiful freeride skis are submerged under the powder and you're making your initiation into your turn, if you've got a certain form of an A-frame, and usually people A-frame more in one direction than the other, when the A-frame happens and the skis are at slightly different angles, you really know about it and you really feel about it when you're in snow that is around your skis. On piste, when it's groomed, you can sort of get away with it because nothing's sideways in your way. But when you're in an itinerary run, and let's say you're submerged a little bit in between turns of a bit of, chopped up snow, let's say you're submerged, hopefully, in a half a meter of fresh powder. If those skis are at slightly different angles, the skis underground will travel in slightly different directions. And then it's your job in the turn to correct the turn. Quite often it feels quite uncomfortable. You'll probably get the turn made, hopefully, but it's a bit of a different journey inside the turn. So that's one of the things on piste that we ask people to really think about. We definitely look at flex pattern as well. So it's very important that someone has got real domination over their ankle joint. If it's the knee joint doing a lot of the flexing and the ankle joint is underperforming and you're going back seat, you will definitely miss a part of the turn at the start. You'll be slightly out of balance in the initiation of it. And by the time you get like halfway to 3/4 away through the turn, you're really on the back seat. And quite often in those situations, there's almost a panic recovery. And that panic recovery can make someone move suddenly to get back into balance. If it's a bit of a distance that you've got to move suddenly, the skis don't like that. The pressure on the skis from tip to tail doesn't like a sudden movement. And that's where sometimes people make the correction, bit back seat, touch on the front a bit too hard, go over the handlebars at the front. So we work a lot on flex and flex domination of the boot. You know, that sort of stuff can be done at home. We obviously encourage people to think about, like, chuck your ski boot on even after tonight's talk, and flex it and get used to being the dominator of your ski boot plastic. But on the slope, again, can't stress enough to go and get that pre-work done at indoor snow domes. And if you're lucky enough to get up on the glaciers, brilliant. But yeah, we want to make sure that the flex pattern is in good shape. Third point I'd say is we really have to have, at this stage in skiing, people having good core activation. So if the middle of the body doesn't have like a constant sort of almost a half kind of tension in it, not full tension like you do a plank or something like that, but just a kind of a retained bit of tension in the core, that is great. If you don't have that, because of the nature of being off piste, this isn't golf, right? So it's 50% what you try and predict and do, your actions, but it's definitely 50% reaction. And sometimes under that snow, we don't quite know what's underneath it. You might get that sudden shock. And for me and Rob, when we're coaching, and it goes for the rest of the academy team, we can see someone making the perfect setup. Everything's this is brilliant. They're going through the turn, suddenly got a slight compression, no core activation, shoulders dive forwards, break at the waist, bum goes back, and then the turn's out of control. And it's the same thing with pressure traveling front to back quite rapidly, and skis, again, they don't like that. Another thing that's really important to us is upper body management. So in powder, when you've got a skier which you're watching on piste, you're doing a video analysis session, and I'd encourage people, if ever you've got your buddy, you go to your indoor snow dome or your dry slope or whatever, and you're skiing with someone, but you can see that their inside hand, really common mistake, inside hand is dropping. Quite often when you measure it on a video camera after, you'll see somewhere between a 25 centimeter and a 1 meter height difference between the left and right hand, or vice versa, as you go through a turn. Now, what that will do in powder, or variable terrain, is it will alter the pressure control that you established or you wanted between the two skis. Because in your mindset, you're like, right, I know how I'm going to stand. I'm not going to be charging hardcore pressure on the outside ski on powder, but I'll still have a bit more on it. If that upper body kind of like loses management and the inside hand drops, there is an overload of pressure that you've then got to correct during the turn. And that is another thing you don't need to be thinking about whilst you're skiing. There is a whole set of other things to go through, but that's a lot more like, perfecting technique. But you rightly say it, that it's so important to get the technical element of your skiing really worked on. But they're the kind of, if you're going to go and you've only, for example, if I get a client comes out to Verbier and I'm skiing with someone, I've only got a half morning, they are demanding, right, I want to go off piste. I'll kind of look for those things quite rapidly in the lesson. But it doesn't take a ski instructor sometimes. Quite often, if you're skiing with your buddy and there's a couple of key points, you don't have to be an instructor to notice those things in someone skiing. So that's kind of what I would say would be essentials to survive a powder ski run.
And how important is it that you have this like level of fitness? Because you described there the sort of like your core and all that sort of thing. How do you build up to that for like being able to ski off piste very comfortably?
Right. Do you know, there's an interesting way of answering that, and I'll start with the negative end. You don't. You could get away with it because ultimately it's not like your ski run's going to last 5 minutes. Your ski run is going to last probably around 20 to 40 seconds. And in that run, it won't be too far off some basic things you might do in day-to-day life. So you could get away with it. That would be the wrong way of looking at things. So I wouldn't say, like, if you've not been in the gym, don't go and ski powder. I'll be like, do you know what? Go and experience it. It's great. What would be really sensible is, because powder and off piste and the terrain, the nature of the terrain is going to kind of force you into probably, making a few errors here and there. You want to be able to recover from the errors. Therefore, like, for example, if you go back seat, you don't want to overload and put torque through your knee joint. If you've got strength in your hamstrings and you've been doing some conditioning work, it will really serve you well, you know. So there's obviously endurance and strength you might get out of cycling or climbing on your bike or whatever you might be doing. Yoga is obviously great for the flexibility, and Pilates the same. But yeah, strength and conditioning, you know, you want to know that you might get caught. You know, on piste, we all notice we probably perform better technically. But if you're forced into these environments by, you know, error, if you wish to go to the environments because you love it, definitely get some time and give your body the best chance of survival. Quite often, if you know, a fitter person, if you recover a mistake, if you're watching someone, and we find this, that you're watching someone on the ski run, they went out of balance. Their strength helped them recover. You might not see it on a video analysis session. So when you're back in the room and you're looking in front of the group and you're like, that person knows that there's something went wrong at that moment. On the video, you can you know, you couldn't see it. And that's where strength is essential. So from an injury prevention point of view, go into those environments that are, you know, challenging your body. They're challenging the technique, but when your technique gets challenged, so does your physiology, because you know you've got to get out of the sometimes the backseat position. You've got to pull yourself up. On the other side of things, powder off-piste variables has a better chance of knocking you off balance. And if you came out of a turn, you got knocked off balance, we all know what it's like trying to find your ski, trying to clip it back on in the environment. You're probably with other people that are waiting for you, the stress, the pressure of all that sort of stuff. You want to know that when you're in that situation, it doesn't absolutely exhaust and fatigue you, because you probably ain't going to do it at the very start, you know, the end of the run. It's going to happen somewhere in the middle or whatever. And then you've got to finish the rest of your run. So, yeah, I would say definitely, you know, either work at home following your YouTube videos, you know, get some advice off a friend, go to a gym, follow a program. It'll definitely work better for the off-piste challenges.
And how important is it, talking about injuries and things like that, to prevent that in some sort of capacity, to have like a mountain guide that knows the area and has all the qualifications that about the sort of terrain and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really key point actually, especially for, I mean, we know that like Ski Club of Great Britain members, they're keen skiers, right? So you are the crowd that are going to get out there and you're going to want to venture off piste. In an ideal world, you know, it's budget sort of dependent. In an ideal world, if you're going to go somewhere, especially somewhere you don't know, get a mountain guide. You know, mountain guide, or in certain resorts, a level 4 ski instructor. A level 4 ski instructor has done a European mountain security part of their exam qualification, and they have got a very good knowledge, you know, to go into a lot of the off-piste areas. Quite often these days, I mean, I look back over 20 years, I've reined it in a little bit these days, especially given the current climate situation and the temperature shifts that we get these days of, you know, it's minus 11 one day, plus 11 the next day. We kind of don't do that extra 20 meters of traversing these days to go and find, oh, there's a beautiful bit of untouched over there. We'll play the safer game. But I would highly recommend, if you can, chip in with a group of friends, a guide or a level 4 instructor if you're going off piste. That would be number one recommendation. If you are not in that sort of situation, take local advice. You know, ask people, try and buddy up with people that you might meet there. I think that's one of the beauties of the ski club is you know, it's kind of a ready built ski community, and quite often you can get into a chat with someone that says like, you know, there's a great run there. You can get that lift to there. That's a safe place to ski. You can get a few laps in. I know a person there who's been skiing this place for 30, 50 years, whatever it might be. That would be my choice. But yeah, if you can, get a guide, get a level 4 instructor if you're going off piste for sure.
I've got a bit of a fun question for you.
Okay.
Where is your favorite off-piste destination? You must have been at quite a few places. So, do you have a top
I mean,
five?
it sounds biased, right? I live in Verbier, been here 30 years. It's really difficult to not say Verbier. Um, I'll say some other places that I've had some of my best sort of life experiences at, but Verbier has got, you know, it's just got some of the best ski terrain. It doesn't matter. Um, what you're searching for. We've got it all here, and we've got it under one lift starting point, and we can go for 400 kilometers in all in around the area. Um, I have had some of the best days of my life in Verbier. Even this season just gone, we had a Helly Hansen day here. Lucky enough to ski with some of some really fantastic skiers. Um, I was struggling to keep up with, and it's brilliant, inspirational to ski with. But just opened an area in Verbier. There's an area called Attala. A lot of people might know it. It's where the funny space lift goes to. You traverse across, and you've got all this incredible terrain. You've got to be super careful. You've got to know what you're doing and time it right. But we were lucky enough to open it one day in January, end of January, and my God, it was waist to sort of shoulder deep in places. That was a great part of the season. In Verbier as well, we've got the backside of Montfort, really notorious area that has some incredible terrain. You obviously see images of the Bec de Ros, the Freeride World Tour finale in Verbier. But then Verbier's got other beautiful things like Brusson, where Rob lives, who's on this chat. I mean, Rob, you can probably chat and explain it, but you go up there and it's just got some absolutely fantastic tree skiing. What's your take on it, Rob?
Yeah,
Brusson?
no, very much so. Just to echo that, I think we kind of sit in a very privileged position, and probably some of you guys do as well, where we're all part of the kind of ski community. Therefore, you've skied in some wonderful places all over the world, and it's very, very difficult to kind of answer a question like that, really, because sometimes it's almost not even pinning it down to a particular place, but it's like Warren said. Then it's actually pinning it down to a particular run. But I
Yeah.
know in my case, actually, I can pin it down to a particular turn, which sounds really geeky. I can remember the best turn I've ever made. And it was in powder. It was
Where,
actually,
where
it
was
was,
where was it?
yeah, it was night ski. It was our first trip in Japan that we went to, and it was night skiing in Japan. And I can still remember that feeling of just being in this absolutely amazing place and
Opposite the
just
chairlift with
under the
gold.
chairlift, yeah, and it was just this like we were all skiing as a team, so there's like we'd skied with the clients and stuff through the day, and then I don't know if you remember, Warren, like we had a few beers, didn't we? We had some sushi, and then we all went back up the hill, and all the clients, everyone's just flying around, and I can just remember this one turn, and it was just like, oh, that's the give me that every single day for the rest of my life, and it's such a lovely feeling, and it really kind of, and I suppose that's what kind of keeps you that carrot once it's there that you're constantly sort of searching for it again. But yeah, no, like Warren said, like Verbier is, I think the reason why we've settled here is because even with all that traveling and all that fantastic experience of other places, we just keep coming back to this as being like the ultimate. It's got everything. It's got absolutely everything. So on this side of the valley where I am in Bruison at the moment, it's got some of the best, probably some of the best tree skiing I've ever done is over this side. And then you get your skins on and some of the stuff that you can access from a touring point of view as well, without it actually being particularly extreme. It just opens up a whole new area of the mountain that you come to a super busy resort like Verbier and you can still find fresh tracks 2, 3, 4 days after a storm sometimes. So yeah, it's definitely up there.
I think you asked me about my favorite run. I would say going back to Japan. There was a year in 2008 where I was just trying to find the picture, but I was skiing with a press trip. Lindsay, that's from Heaven PR, she put a press trip on, and many people that are big fans of the ski club were there, and we got to ski off the back of the resort in Furano. And in this sort of run, first of all, I'd never experienced powder like it. So for me, it was like a kid in a candy shop skiing this stuff. Like, oh my God, you chuck a bit of snow in the air and it sort of stays up there for about a minute and a half while it falls down. But I was skiing with a photographer called Melody Sky. Some of you guys might know about, but she took a photograph of a turn, a bit like what Rob just said, like one of these memorable turns. And I was sort of making turns in this powder where it wasn't like waist deep, sort of shoulder deep. It was going underneath the powder. It was ridiculous, and it ended up being a poster for Vocal International on the Katana ski, which is now the Mantra 108. And I was blown away by that. That Japan for me was life changing. Absolutely life changing. The other one I remember is in 1999. Lucky enough to ski in Narvik. With the likes of Francine Morelian, who had just won the IFSA Free Ski World Tour. Bruno Compagne, that gone on to set up Black Crows, the ski company. Some of you probably, well, you definitely would know about. And Guido Perini, who does a lot of the filming for Xavier Delarue's movies. The guys at the tourist office opened up the lift for us in Narvik, and I'll post some of these pictures later onto the chat. But we got to ski down in a time where, at the time of year, it was the midnight sun. So the sun never quite set. It sort of came down, went on the level, and then it started coming back up. And the only thing I can relate it to is Star Trek. Like when you watch Star Trek as a kid and you sort of seeing all these crazy planets and these crazy colors, that for me was one of the most like, oh my God, this is why I'm doing this sport. It was epic. The snow was kind of spring snow-ish, but it was beautiful spring snow, skiing down to the fjords and stuff like that. So, Verbier as a general, Japan, unbelievable. Got to experience it to know what it feels like, because the weight of the powder. And then Narvik and fjords and skiing Lofoten and things like that, they are incredible, but very soulful skiing, soulful off-piste skiing, I would call it.
Excellent. We've already got some questions coming through, actually.
Yeah.
Bryce has a question of what touring skis and bindings do you recommend? He's choosing between the Salomon NTN Explore 88, and there's quite a few here, actually. But do you have a recommendation?
So I mean, Rob, I think, and this is quite a broad statement, everything that's made these days, especially the last couple of years, is brilliant. I was at the GB test. There isn't bad kit anymore. There's just not bad. There's not bad boots. There's not bad kit. It is brilliant. Everything's got lighter. Everything's got better. I personally, when I go touring, I ski on the ski I'm on is a Vocal Katana V-Works. So it's a carbon ski, probably a bit wide actually for my old dodgy knees, and it's about 112 on whatever it is underfoot. And I'm on a Kingpin binding sometimes, but I've recently switched to a Duke PT13. I use the 13 instead of the 16 because it's a bit lighter. My personal take, in terms of what you're saying there, in terms of the list of skis, and this is a general kind of answer to the questions, so I won't be best at answering those questions. The best person works within the Ski Club of Great Britain, who is my go-to as well for kit. But when I go uphill, I want something light. But I favour a stronger ski for coming downhill with. That's my real key. If it takes me an extra quarter of an hour or whatever to get uphill, I'd rather get uphill on the kit that will allow me to ski at 40, 50 mile an hour, making big turns coming down the hill. And the nice part for the modern carbon skis that they throw into the mix on touring and free riding and off-piste skiing is, torsionally, these things are incredible. So what might wobble, get battered around, and maybe on the lower part of a descent, it's like I'm getting vibrations going on. Or if you're touring up to somewhere steep and gnarly, you want something that isn't just going to sort of judder down the hill. We've all felt juddering turns. They're not nice. And if you've got a juddering turn going on where your ski is doing that on a steep, exposed environment, that ain't great. So with the carbon skis, I've just found, I think I first skied the Katana V-Works way back in 2014. It was actually in Japan, and I was very used to skiing the standard Katana, let's call it the Mantra 108 these days. And I remember the first jumping on this touring setup and thinking to myself, oh my God, this hasn't got the guts of what my normal freeride skier's got. But actually, with a bit of adaptation and thinking about your technique and thinking about how you work the length of the ski, rather than being a bull in the china shop, I was treading a bit carefully. I really got used to the ski quite quickly, and I got great usage out of it. So in my winter, I'll probably spend, I would say, about 20% of time on a touring freeride setup, as opposed to a pure freeride setup. And that's what I would say. So in terms of giving feedback on those skis, I'd almost point that back to to ski club, tech
Yeah.
man who knows. I mean, he really does. He knows everything about everything. And like I say, I would go to him for my answers on equipment. But
So,
my personal thing is, I love a carbon ski for the uphill, and it gives brilliant torsional stiffness for the downhill.
yeah, Henry's the guy. So Henry John is heads up a lot of our ski test content. So in January, he was testing a lot of skis and things like that. He's got his own talk as well on the website that you
When
can.
is the talk, by the way? Because I'll probably tune into
The
that myself.
talk is, I've got it here somewhere. Let me just double check. It is on the 28th of October.
Okay.
It's an online talk. So I was fortunate enough to go along with Henry to the ski test too, and we've scored them all, different brands and everything like that. So it's quite an interesting thing, and there'll be YouTube content and things like that too. His email is henry.john@skiclub.co.uk. I can put it into the chat a bit later as well. We have one other question that says, "Are the US Rockies not in there? Have you ever skied there?"
I haven't skied the Rockies. No. I mean, I've skied snowbird and alta in the US. I've not done much US skiing actually. Probably should venture out there, right, and get some ski time there. The problem with what me and Rob do is we've got such a back-to-back season. It's so difficult to get away unless it's an organized trip. We obviously got friends and buddies that do, they get out there and ski. But I'd love to hear the advice, of someone skiing the Rockies. Throw it in there, Any recommendations? Our eyes are always open to new trips, new destinations. Always looking out.
Must admit, further northward, we're lucky enough to do a trip in Revelstoke in Canada each year, and that's fantastic as a place to be. That's incredible. That's kind of it's a long way away, and it's quite remote in that sense, but it's yeah, a really really cool place to visit.
We actually have a ski club event that is hosted by the resorts in the Rockies next week on the 10th of September at the White House. So if you want to know more information about the Rockies, definitely come to that event. And also, there's lots of information on our website. So if you haven't skied there before and want to, it'd be great. And we also have the Icon Pass discount that you can take advantage of. Is there any other questions from the team, from the group?
Telluride is a place I've never been. I would love to go there. That's got to be one of the. I mean, we all remember Rasta Stevie, right, for Blizzard.
Rasta Stevie, yeah, Blizzard of Ours. Yeah, that's like the classic movie segment.
Yeah. God, if Ski Club are running a Telluride week, I think I might book on that myself.
And you touched a little bit on conditions changing.
Yeah.
And you have to be a little bit more aware. Are you seeing this more year on year, that it's getting worse, or do you think it's kind of going like this? Or
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think in the short term, the last maybe 10 years, definitely seeing temperature shifts. One of the things I was mentioning this when we did the thing on BBC One back in April, that you got to read up on it. You got to get the knowledge, whether you think you need it or not, because quite often let's put it on the other, again, let's start from one end of the spectrum. If you're a piste skier and you ski on piste, you're not interested in off piste, but you see an avalanche and you see that you've got an opportunity to go and like assist or whatever, you can't not get involved. If you've got no prior knowledge, then you're not going to really have an idea of how you could help. Doesn't mean you've got the kit in your bag. You could just be skiing as a great holiday skier, but it's really worth reading up on information about it. I know there's a lot going on at the ski show this year where people will have an opportunity to come and get educated, when they get the ski show ticket. So that's one thing I'd recommend. There are online stuff with We Mountain. We do work with them, and they are in a way a bit like the Paddy for diving. They are the off-piste educational unit for skiing and snowboarding. Couldn't recommend it more. Have noticed the temperature shifts. I think the thing we all see and talk about is that seasons are getting shorter, later start, earlier finish. It's not always true. Sometimes we get crazy snow in May and June, and it's like, some of the
Certainly
off-peak.
was this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we adapt. I think from a technique point of view, go and learn to ski slush. It's great fun. Go and learn to ski heavier snow conditions. The lower slopes are going to be like that. But more importantly, from a safety element of off-piste, yes, the temperature shifts are there. The snowpack is weaker because of it. And whenever you get that temperature shift, you get the noticeable difference in the layers between snowfalls. Obviously, we'd love it all to bond and be at the same temperature. It really isn't, and it will break away. So read up on it. Especially if this talk we're doing is about off-piste skiing. It's great to go and on an adventure and get that sensation of powder. We all love it, but you can't put your life on the line for it. You've got to go and get educated.
You were talking, both of you talked about the feeling of the perfect turn. Can you describe that a little bit more? You might have different, because everyone skis a bit differently, but it's what made it feel like the best?
Oh God, I'm trying to think of a few now. I mean, winging it is the right
Yeah.
word. I remember, I remember being dropped off, and again, it was in 2013. It was for a vocal poster. So it was like skiing on a steep slope over in an area called Trion. Trion is sort of almost between Verbier and Chamonix. And I was bricking it actually. I was quite like, oh God, if I get this wrong, one, that helicopter wasn't cheap. Two, I'm not going to get a second chance to do it. Three, my team manager at Vocal's probably going to think I'm whatever. And so it was a lot of pressure on it. And I remember sort of starting a ski run and feeling like this is great. Oh God, no, it's not. Oh no, oh my God, I'm feeling into like crusty stuff under here. And then 3 or 4 turns in, that was one of my best sensations. And it wasn't necessarily because of how great the snow was. It was nice, but it was the fact I survived it. And I kind of, I don't know if you call it an ego thing, whatever you would say, it's like, oh, I got through that. And I wasn't sure I was going to get through it. So not knowing if it might work, if that makes any sense, not knowing if the turn's it's gonna work out. When it does work out, it can make quite a good feeling on like, whoa,
Mm.
that's a memory to take on board. It's quite a steep pitch. It was like 40, I don't know, 50 degrees, 45 degrees. So to get down it was quite good. I think what we just talked about earlier, like going underneath, as in like submerged in powder. I won't forget that. That's like that is it. And I think Rob explained it quite nicely. I mean, I do remember when he was talking about it. It's just I, that's why powder skiing. That's why this talk is quite relevant. That's why if you ever get to do it, it's like that sensation of being not touching anything. So you're riding in something where there's a kind of a difference and a controlled momentum. There's not a definite base, and it really feels like freedom. Whereas if you're hitting something and you're on it, you're very calculated. Whereas when you're gliding, it's just yeah. I mean, it's phenomenal, right? I mean, we all want it. But yeah, what do you reckon, Rob? What's your take on that?
Don't, because you'll get me started and I'll probably start crying, to be honest. And that's just going to be embarrassing. That it's just it's when it's all kind of everyone's kind of like used to your
You are going to
norm. Like
cry,
I
I
guess there's like the everyday that you kind of used to, and I always put it down to like the senses a little bit. So, for example, like you could look at it from like a ski technique point of view, which I think is almost like the wrong way of looking at it,
think.
because
I
I'm
agree.
sure if you were going to look at ski technique, skiing powder, and you see Warren and I ski it, it's probably by the book. It's probably pretty good. It should be anyway for the amount of time we've been doing it. It should be on paper a really really good term, but it's the other stuff that I kind of look at. I don't want it to be technically the best turn I've ever made. It's how it makes me feel. And it's like even just like looking at it, it's like the sound of it, like Warren was just saying there, you're not in anything. So it
Mm.
sounds completely different. It feels different. It smells different. It's like everything about it is just like, oh, that is something else there. That's really, really cool. And then but sometimes when you do from a physical point of view, when you do hook it up and you get into powder and you know that your techniques kind of assisted you to make a really, really nice consistent arc and you almost know that the snow's just like billowing out behind you in some kind of like wave. It's wicked. It's just such a yeah, it's
Mm.
just such a lovely feeling, I suppose, is probably the best way to word it, in the sense in how all the other senses kind of, you know, tap
Actually,
into
it's
that.
not a bad shout to put it out there. Anyone on this talk, can anyone else give any stories what they feel what was their moment where they shone, or something was just like, oh my God, this is like another world. Anyone got any other personal experiences?
Right. Everybody then, you need to log on to our Canada trip or our Japan trip, and the chances are you might get to experience it
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, love that. What's yours, Peter? What's your best turn? Give us a lowdown.
So I used to ski a lot when I was younger in the Port de Soleil, and the wall.
Yeah,
Um,
the
so
Avoriaz ball.
yeah, and
Yeah,
it was just probably about ankle deep
yeah,
powder, probably. So it
yeah.
wasn't really powder, but it's probably the best I've ever skied the wall because it was obviously got the steepness to it. And it wasn't actually as daunting because it wasn't mogulled and all that sort of thing. And it just felt like surfing, and it just felt like this floating sensation. And the amount of times I've skied that runway has been horrible. And
I was going to
actually,
say that's a notorious like mogul,
yeah,
well, an icy mogul run where you go if you people the stories flying down there, and but if you caught that in powder, that's
yeah,
quite a memorable thing.
it was like first run of the day almost. And I think they were kind of debating whether to keep that area open and things like that. But it was the perfect run for me.
Yeah, no, I've not. Do you know what? That's an intro. I'm glad you actually told your story because I've never heard yet of one of those type of Avoriaz wall runs. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. We got some questions coming in. Felt like riding a dolphin in the snow in Tux in May. Yeah, that's not a bad way of expressing it, actually. I get that, tip to tail, right? That's and there was good snow up there. I remember that. I was watching pictures from people posting it in May. Hinchtux, very good.
Are there skiers that you sort of take inspiration from, or they could be like not necessarily professionals, but it could be people that you just ski with as friends?
Do you know what? I ski with a guy, Marcus, who's one of the Helly Hansen ambassadors. I'm on the same team as him. Don't ski anything like him. He's one of the best skiers I think I've ever seen. And actually, that comment that Paul just put out there about dolphin turns, watching Marcus ski, and that actually goes on that little point I was talking about when we opened an area up on the Attila couloirs in January. He was with me. And I was watching him ski, and even to this day, I'm like, how is he even doing that? It was literally like he was riding the full tip to tail, and it was like a dolphin turn, and nothing was phasing him. He was just, I don't know. It was like watching God on skis. The guy nailed it every turn, never caught off balance. But it was something like that. It was the feeling of like he was completely going fully tip to tail, and just riding his ski in and out of the snow and doing what he wanted. And it was like, it was watching really, like Rob explained, really creative looking skiing in his own style. And it was in his own world, clearly. Um, and it was just a pleasure to watch. It was literally like, oh my God, like I got such a buzz, not just out of skiing the powder we skied that day, but out of watching him ski powder. Um, yeah, Marcus Castanen. You'll see him on all the carve. I know the carve guys are coming to the ski show, so they're really good guys to check out. They've got great tech, especially if you're just sort of skiing and analyzing your stuff. Marcus is one of their ambassadors. I mean, like, just watch it skiing. Jesus, I'll do it tonight. Go on YouTube. Mind blowing. What's his stuff called, Rob? His diary does.
I remember.
Return of the Ski? No,
Oh no,
Return,
Return of the Turn. That's it. Yeah,
Return of
yeah,
the
On the
Turn. Yeah,
turn, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so
He
that's
also wears lots of flannel, doesn't he? On the like,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
he's
it's good skier.
he's my favorite. He's my favorite skier at the moment, actually. Got to say.
yeah.
I think
Rob, do
that's
you
the other
have?
thing, like what Warren mentioned at the start as well, just with regards to like skiing powder, like some like other kind of other things that it brings back for me when you're kind of thinking about those runs, it's the people that you're with.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and even just like I can still hear the even though you can't see each other, I can still remember being in the trees in Japan, for example, not knowing where anyone is, but I can just hear the whoops and the hollers and the screams and the woo, woo, everyone's just going crazy, and you can kind
Yeah,
of, it's just that buzz that
yeah,
almost brings it. It's a weird, like, sort of, as much as like skiing is very much an individual sport, it's only you doing your stuff on your skis. It's only you turning your skis at the end of the day, but it almost brings like a bit of a team element into it. And I've always loved that. It's a real sort of, sort of brings in those kind of like team values, and I mean, it's a nice way to kind of remember things by.
Rob, you hit the nail on the head there. I remember what you're talking about, especially on the back of a place like Ferrano, where
Yeah,
it's absolute pin drop silence,
yeah,
but with anticipation. And it's that, you because it is, you're in this environment, this wilderness, which you're privileged to be in, but it's silent. It's incredibly silent. And then you hear that distant sort of sound or the rustling or the noise of someone coming through. It's just like, wow,
yeah, yeah.
so definitely, that's what we live for in our skiing, in our skiing career.
I'm conscious we got 10 minutes left. Does anybody else have any other questions for Warren and Rob?
I'm just wondering if can I post pictures to this chat group? I probably can't, can I? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up some YouTube links from some of our previous trips, just so
Because
you guys can kind of
I've got a picture here. I
gorge on
probably
some
can't,
powder.
but let me see if I
Oh, Matteo, can you get my charger from downstairs? Can you unplug it and just bring it up for me, please? Thank you.
uh can I
Charger.
put a picture on it? Can't. No, no, I can't. I'll send something in. I can't post a picture unfortunately, but what I'll do is onto this chat. I'll see if there's any way to send some pictures from things we've done over the
Excellent.
year. We've got quite a lot of bits and bobs we can post. That's for sure.
Excellent. From all the things that we've talked about today, if there was like one solid takeaway that you could with one tip that you would give to anyone on this call, what would it be for Off-Piste?
Don't ever get in front of my line on a fresh powder day. Is that no, no? It'd be something like. Actually, this is an interesting one because this talk is, it's our technique series of talks, right? And me and Rob were like, one of our bugbears would be hearing someone say, and we'll probably hear it at the ski show. And I was always told to lean back when I go and ski powder. Um, you know, I get it. I get why people feel that because standing and not knowing necessarily what the terrain is, you can feel that you press too hard on the front of the ski. But what we'd say to people is, those points that we listed out on this talk, whatever you do in powder, unless it's extremely adverse conditions, don't lean back. The first thing you're going to do is put your knee under stress. Second thing you're going to do after leaning back, you're probably going to get pinged forward anyway, accidentally. We'd say to people, really don't have that temptation to go by what's been said for decade after decade. Always lean back when you're in powder. Just stay in the middle. Have your upper body and your core. Maybe raise your shoulders slightly. Adjust your upper body
Hello
position.
and welcome.
But I would just say, if you're doing that, don't have that temptation, to follow those old kind of sayings. Just get your core strong, get your symmetry right, get your upper body management in good shape, and you'll be great in powder.
Excellent. There's a couple of more questions. So Bryce, what was the price for Japan? You like to go next year?
I think it's called a bargain. I can't remember the exact price. No, I'm joking. Rob might know that better, but we can send you a link to it to this chat for sure.
Yeah, for fortunately, sorry. Yeah, the links, it's been taken off because we're fully booked on Japan. So, but I can't remember the price off the top of my head. I think it's about 2 or 3 thousand, I think, something like that.
Yeah, this year for some reason I think there's a lot of enthusiasm out of there. I think we've only got a couple of spots left on the Canada trip, and it just seems like things seem to be selling out quite quick.
Yeah.
They're not. We always encourage people to try and get to Verbier, and if you've got the chance to, I guess, look at weather conditions, look at what's happening. Even if it's for a couple of days, try and get out and have a ski with us. There's some brilliant stuff on your doorstep, and it's obviously an hour and a half Heathrow or whatever, or wherever you're flying in from in the UK. But we're definitely open to help questions on that. And obviously, I know because a lot of clients have done it where they go on the ski club weeks, and there's some brilliant off-piste weeks that the ski club itself are doing. So I couldn't recommend them more either from the feedback that I get from them.
And another question, Peter has said, can you talk about technique for a beginner off-piste skier? So someone starting off completely beginner.
Yeah, if it's a complete beginner, first, I mean, it depends what beginner level we're talking about there. To go through the stages of it, if you accidentally, as a beginner, have to ski off piste, so it's a really good question actually. If you've got that week in the season, it's like, oh my God, you're in your beginner environment, you're progressing on, your snowplow is between snowplow and parallel, let's say, and you've got to survive it. One of the things we'd obviously say is to take things very slowly. One of the things we might say is, you'd need to think about every outcome of the terrain. So you don't want to get in a situation where the terrain is going to put you under pressure. You've got to know that there is a comfortable gradient, a comfortable outrun. If you're a beginner where, beginner intermediate type skier, it's really important that you're guided. It's really important that you've got an instructor talking you through every part of the turn. If you're left on your lonesome in a situation of not having that technique, but you're forced into the off-piste environment, you need someone holding your hand. Without sounding, but you literally need someone to talk you through every step of the turn, be your coach, be your confidant, be someone that's going to really make you feel safe in that environment. But beginners and powder and off-piste, they don't align at that stage in skiing so well. It's usually sort of intermediate, we're moving towards intermediate and advanced that are much better equipped to better get into that environment.
And there's a question about boots. Should you ski with piste boots or off-piste boots for off-piste?
You can do both. I mean, to be honest, the boot itself, I'd always call it a generalization. I think when you buy ski boots, you buy a ski boot in general. If you're a specialist and you're going off on a mega touring trip, you may want to consider something that is a full-blown touring setup, touring boot. But generally speaking, with the way boots are these days, you're going to look for a boot. I mean, I ski a Dalbello boot that technically speaking is a free ride boot, but I actually use it and jump on a pair of slalom skis or GS skis, and it works really well for me. It's what I was saying about modern day kit is so good across the board. But I kind of recommend a lot of people to get a boot that's their glove, that's their go-to for everything. And if you're a skier that wants to expand your skiing into the off-piste realms and environment, look for the kind of boots that have got pins on the front and walking mode that you can switch to. Quite often they switch back into alpine mode and it becomes a brilliant, robust piste performing boot as well. I know that's going to be one of the things that you're going to see at the ski show this year as well upstairs. You're gonna get that environment where you can have a proper mosey around and have a look at all of the kit that's available, go through it, be shown all the tech into it. But yeah, boots these days, they definitely cover both bases of off-piste and on-piste together.
Excellent. Any last questions before we head off? We got last 5 minutes. Excellent. And don't forget, there's some more talks from Warren. The next one's about biomechanics. I think it is on, they had all the dates here, but they've gone now. It's next week, I think, isn't it? I think possibly. It's all on the website if you look onto the events section of the Ski Club website. So check that out. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And if you have any questions, ask the Ski Club. We're more than happy to help you.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, Charlotte, for putting it together. Appreciate it. And you guys have a great ski. Me and Rob will let you know how we get on tomorrow. We'll probably do some posts and we'll share.
Yeah, check in with our socials tomorrow. You'll see us up there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for listening.